just putting down a video here today just because I just want to address the whole issue of 351 Cleveland 4V heads not making torque. I've just heard that regurgitated so many times it makes me want to throw up. So I kind of want to just put a few things down to dispel some of those myths. And I'm going to talk about this engine just a little bit, our 351 Clever. But so this is our 351 Clever. This is early 70s Windsor block. I think this is 72 or something like that. This is 385 stroke Eagle crank in this engine. And I combined that with, it just has another set of aftermarket like scat rod or something like that, an I-beam. I happened to find a set of diamond flat top Boss 302 pistons, and I combined that with this 385 stroke. Now, the trick is about those pistons. You need a Boss 302 piston that has, or is designed for, the 1.60 compression height, which a normal Boss 302 is not designed for that compression height. It's going to be designed for a 1.54 compression height, because the Boss 302, it had the 3-inch stroke, the 3.0 stroke, but it had a 289 connecting rod in it. It had the Hypo 289 connecting rod, so it had a 5.155 center to center rod. So it had a shorter piston, so that piston will not work with that combination. So it kind of needed a weird piston, which is a little harder to find if you're hoping to find a set, not have them custom made. So it just happened, I was just scrolling on eBay, saw these diamond pistons, had the 1.60 compression height, Boss 302 pistons made, you know, just exactly what I needed. Killer deal on them, picked them up, yeah, happy as can be. But that's how I found the parts to kind of start this engine right here actually. And then I combined that with our 4V Cleveland heads, the closed chamber cylinder head. These are the heads that I worked over on this channel. So if you're curious about those heads and what they flowed, you can go back and look at those and what I did. They have port stuffers on the intake side. I did some mild porting on them. They flow, I don't know, mid 330s, something like that, almost 340 peak. At the very peak is what they flowed on the intake side. On the exhaust side, it flowed like 200, a little over 200 at the very peak of that. Now the camshaft in this thing, before I say that, the piston, I didn't finish the piston. With the piston, with that flat top Boss 302 style piston, and the crank and everything we got in here, we have, with that closed chamber, closed combustion chamber, we've got about 11, 5 to 1 is where this engine is at right now, which is why E85 gets running it, so we can run a cheap fuel in it and be able to drive it. So that's that part of it. The camshaft in this thing, I'll put a picture of it here, and I'll just put this up for a few seconds so you can see it. So that is a 230, 235 I think, degrees duration at 50, 550 lift on both sides, 112 LSA. That's the basics of it anyway. So that combined with a 1 3/4 inch header, that's what we got running on this engine, along with a CHI 225 9.5 standard 4150 flange intake manifold. They don't offer many intake manifolds for this, and so this would be better served with a dual plane actually, because of the mild camshaft that's in it. But because there's just not many available intakes, just went ahead and went with the single plane knowing that this thing is gonna create plenty of torque anyway, even though the old maid's tale is that these cylinder heads don't make any torque. I'm gonna tell you right now that that is a bunch of baloney. I'm gonna show you a little snippet of the dyno printout that shows that the whole torque production thing with these heads is a whole myth. That's a bunch of baloney. Whoever created that is probably building their engines wrong. If you've got the wrong combination with these heads, you know, low compression, big camshaft, you know, too over-carbureted, not tuned right, I can totally see this thing being a dog if built incorrectly. You built these things right, like it's supposed to be, and they make torque. This is not a high revving engine, but it makes good torque anyway, but it makes good peak power too, because these things flow. You don't need a lot of camshaft to get RPM out of them. Anyway, I'm gonna credit to Richard Holdner for doing some dyno testing with the 351 4V heads. I'm gonna put up a couple clips of his dyno printout of the Cleveland 4V head against a few other engines of its time, and just shows how that torque production compared to other engines during that time period. And then after that, I'm gonna show you a clip of the dyno printout, just a snippet of that. I'm not gonna do the whole thing and play it, but you can show a little small piece of it you can see. We'll do that. So anyway, the first one I'm gonna show is gonna be the Boss 302 dyno comparison of the engine dyno compared to Chevrolet's DZ302. And I'm gonna put that up for a little bit here so you can have a good look at that. And if you have a good look at this printout, you can see that the torque production is really similar on these two engines. And because of the airflow offered by that 4V Cleveland head, the peak power is just completely torching that DZ302, because that cylinder head just whips its butt. So we're not losing much torque. It's really close to the same thing, but out on the big end, it's just ripping that DZ apart. Now, we can compare the Boss 351, the 4V head, against a Dodge 340 6-pack, which is Dodge's big dog, you know? And I'll put this one up on the screen here. Now you can see that the Boss 351 compared to that 340, man, you don't believe it. It's amazing. It's beating that thing up. It wasn't a torque beat out at all. I mean, the 340 did all right, but that Boss head just whipped its butt, did a beating on the low end, and did a big beating on the big end. So you can see that we're not losing a bunch of torque on either side of that, which is another shot of proof that those 4V heads do make torque. You just have to do it right. You build them wrong, they don't work. And I'm gonna put one up here of the Boss 351 versus Chevrolet's big dog small block, the LT1, the 350 horse 350. And I'll put that up right here. And you can check out the torque production on that 350 Chevy, which actually had more compression, I believe, or at least close to the same compression as that Boss 351. And you can see our torque production, it's not getting beat up at all. I thought these things didn't make torque. Why is this thing making like torque? What do you know? Not only is it making good torque on the low end, you know, very comparable to the LT1, we're beating the thing out, and on the big end, we're just kicking that thing's tail all the way to Mexico. So as you can see by these old school engine standards, and comparatively from the 4V Cleveland head compared to some of these other classic muscle cars that were so lauded, that 4V, it took them to school. And the thing wasn't losing a bunch of torque, like all these old maid's tales were saying. So that is a bunch of baloney. I'm just tired of hearing of it. Everyone says, oh, you gotta use the 2V so you make some torque. Hogwash. You don't need that 2V. Man, you wanna make some power. You do some port work to those 4V heads. You do things properly. You build the engine the way it needs to be built so it can actually make some power. Put some compression in the thing. Put a properly matched camshaft, properly matched intake manifold, properly matched headers on the thing. You do things right, the thing's gonna make torque, it's gonna make peak power too. This thing's gonna wanna rev. But you gotta do it right. And it has a heavy valve train, so you can't just throw some cheap crap on there and expect that the valve train is gonna be stable. You know, you gotta build it right or it ain't gonna work. It's pretty simple. So yeah. So anyway, so I'm gonna put a little snippet of this engine, the printout. I'm gonna put that on the screen here. And I'm gonna put that up, and you can see that this engine right here, at the very beginning of the pull, at 3,500 RPMs, when we started the pull, this thing is making 474 foot-pounds of torque at 3,500. What do you know? They make torque. Who knew? And not only that, the torque just kept going up and up and up. A good number over 500 foot-pounds of torque. This thing makes big block like power with a small block, stock small block head, by the way. So yeah, completely dispelling all that baloney that people keep regurgitating over and over again. I had a number of people tell me, oh man, you're just gonna hurt the power of that engine. You know, you shouldn't port these heads. Oh, you can't improve flow on the low end of these things. You're just gonna mess it up. You know what? I think that I proved that that's a whole bunch of baloney. You need to quit regurgitating this old school wives' tales that have been around forever and realize these things work when done right. If they don't work, it's because you screwed it up. So, yeah. So that's pretty much that. But hey, I want to thank you guys for stopping by. Please ring that bell, hit your notifications, subscribe to the channel, comment. I want to thank you guys for stopping over here today and listening to me. Hey, one other quick thing. Please give me a little grace because I went and did a thing. Yeah, I got braces, and so it kind of screws up my speech a little bit. You know, I might have a little lisp or something weird like that. Hey, I just decided it's finally time to, you know, do something for me a little bit. And yeah, braces, all that good stuff. Not fun, don't like it, but I'm looking forward to reap the benefits and the rewards of getting this done. So yeah, hey, we will see you next time. Keep wrenching, keep racing, keep enjoying your hot rods. We'll see you next time, guys. Later.